reading from the article that is coming. That's what at least one financial expert is saying. Charles Brown of CB3 Financial says,
one of the brilliant moves that Kmart has done is to partnership with Facebook in these e-gift certificates, so you can actually...
Of government mismanagement. Charles Brown is the president of CB3 Financial Group. He joins us this morning from Chicago.
Significantly dropping. Basically, this is the year of the consumer.
Believe that they're capable of managing anything?
Well, it's sort of like handing the keys to the chicken coop to two wolves.
Good evening, everyone, from Chicago. It's Thursday, July 2nd. I'm your host, Charles Brown, Portfolio Manager with CB3 Financial Group. We are so glad you have joined us. From COVID to clarity, this is CB3 Live. Full docket tonight, guys. It's going to be a great show, so glad you're here with us. Tonight's top three. Coronavirus closes some states and dampens July 4th celebrations. Depends on the state you're in. The best employment report in history happened today. Plus, U.S. stocks finished their best quarter in more than 20 years. And the bull-bear case discusses biotech investments. Let's get started because we've got a lot to cover. First off, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed to us yet, now would be a good time to do it. So you see the little bell there? I've got it highlighted here. Just click the bell so you get updates. And here's why. I have major news coming to you in the next 2 weeks about new programs that will be coming out more than just Thursday night. They won't be long like this one, but they're going to be updates. And that's because the general election is 4 months from tomorrow, and all kinds of things will be happening in the world to affect the markets, and I want you to be part of that. Many of you know that I have tweeted every day for several years. I'm starting a new feed, and I'm asking you to follow that because it's going to handle items and agenda strictly from this broadcast, and you'll want to be keeping up to date with that. So please go to Twitter and follow me, okay? So I wish that I didn't have to show you more on Corona America, but the reality is it's still very much with us. I think 4 episodes I said, this will be the last time I show you this because it looks like it's fading. And here we are again, well over 10 million cases, 50,000 plus new cases just yesterday, 2.6 million confirmed cases in the U.S. Fortunately, the deaths are not quite rising as fast as they were in April and May. We hope that that trend stays in place. If you remember from the last several episodes, this moving average was just starting to turn up. Look at this spike that has happened just in the last week now that the full amount of data is available. We are at over 50,000, even though this chart indicates less than that. As of this morning, we are at 50,000 plus cases, new cases a day. So wave 2 for sure is in place. Now, if we look at this on a different scale, if we just look at Los Angeles, for instance, Los Angeles is the second largest city in the U.S., but Los Angeles County is the largest county. Look at when the reopening started and look at the rise in cases. Does this mean that we reopened too early? Or does this mean that when we reopened, people ignored the precautions? Well, I'm going to take a stance tonight that it's the latter. People did not heed the warnings that they should have been heeding, and those are the states that have high populations that are getting in trouble. If you look at the map here, you'll see these dark brown states. These are the ones that are shutting down, or as they say, reversing. Okay, the dark gray states are states that are reopening and reopened. But Alice said to me, so where could we go? If we wanted to escape COVID, I don't want to go to any of those southern places because of all the insects. So I did a little research and I came up with this destination. Iceland is the only country in the world without mosquitoes, snakes, or other reptiles. Very few species of spiders and very little COVID. So if you see in August when you log on for this program that I'm in a parka out on an ice lake somewhere, you'll know that we took that move, okay? On Tuesday, our Senate Majority Leader said the only way that we're going to put this in the rearview mirror, the only way is with a vaccine, and that's true, but we don't have one. We don't have one now. So in the meantime, the single most important thing that all of us as Americans can do is to wear a mask, not to just protect ourselves, but to protect others. Okay, it's just not that complicated. Now, N95 masks in March and April and even parts of May, you could hardly find. Now they're readily available. So you really need to have one or two. I was talking to our guest tonight in the green room, and he said, well, I feel bad for these people that are having to wear one all day long, and those people probably need 3 or 4 or 5 if you're one of those. I myself have 3. And in fact, here is mine right here, okay? People call this noteworthy when they see me out in public with it, okay? You need to have them. Jerome Adams, the Surgeon General, stepped up his calls for Americans to wear masks. Vice President Pence said, well, there are no plans yet to require the governors. But just today, 5 hours ago, the governor of Texas said, you're all wearing masks if you're going out in public in Texas. And incidentally, one of the big PPE provider stocks rose 4.5% after the market closed on that statement. So all kinds of things happening. What is the compliance like around the world? France, Germany, Italy, you see those lines on the graph, even if you can't read the letters. The next to lowest one is the U.S. And that's because we're not being very compliant, all right? Only UK is worse than we are. So that's a trend that needs to change, in my opinion. The good news for me is that both the USDA and FDA, and I mentioned this last week, but I want to say it again, there is no evidence that you can get COVID-19 from food or from food packaging. Now, we were taking our groceries in from the outside when they were delivered, and we mopped them off with Lysol and took them out of the bags and left the bags out in the hall. Apparently, that's just not necessary anymore. Wear the mask, stay 6 to 8 feet away, and you've got probably 90% a chance of not getting COVID. This is a graph that I just introduced last week for the first time. It's been updated. If you look very carefully, you will see that there's improvement in the financial sector, mobility, in other words, people getting out and getting around, production, employment, demand, that's demand for goods, people spending money. But the only tick down is in health, and it's slight, but it is there. So we're making progress in the other areas of society, but we've got to get this health situation back in check. This just shows you what employees are doing at small businesses. We have a nice correction out of April. Everything's going up until we get to Arizona, Florida, and Texas, heading back down, and that's the map that I showed you earlier. Those are larger states, warmer climates. It's interesting to me that everyone thought that the colder climates would perpetuate this virus, but it's turning out to be the warm climates where people are not social distancing. That's just the pure data. It's interesting to me that Andrew Cuomo said, now if you come into our state from Alabama, Arkansas, Alaska, California, etc., you're going to have to self-quarantine for 14 days. I find this interesting in my only political statement tonight that after he just cut $1 billion from the police budget, I'm wondering how he's going to enforce this, but he's going to try. So 14 days. Seated diners. There was a nice rise when there was nobody eating out in early March. Now we see a nice rise until you get to this huge drop in South Carolina, Florida, Arizona. Okay? Dropped. And that's because of the match you've seen earlier. It's just going to be a rougher restart for restaurants, okay? Just going to be a rougher restart. What I am seeing that I like is that people are back out driving. Even from earlier this year, we're seeing more people on the roads. And I get this data strictly or straight from Apple. More people are walking. They're using their GPS on their phones to go for long walks. What they're not doing is taking transit. Now, being in Chicago, this affects me because I used to get on the train, which is literally right across the street from me in this suburban area of Chicago, and I would either go into church or I would go into the symphony, and I just can't do that now. I mean, they say there's social distancing on the trains. I'm not quite yet confident in that, but I'm hopeful that that's going to change for all of us as we see that there are no problems developing on the trains. We're seeing an increase in flights, but this squiggly line that you see here shows the inconsistency of the daily trips. There's a moving average there and a dark blue line, but the squiggly line still means that many Americans are not yet confident enough to resume their regular either business or leisure flying in America. And that's just something that's just going to take a while. The vacation plans of Americans, look at this plummet. Now, every year after the first of the year, it drops, probably because people are recovering from Christmas spending. This year it dropped, and only 33% of Americans are saying they're going to go on a vacation. You can look back at previous years and see what that was like. Now, does that mean they'll just go someplace closer? Will they have a staycation and invest it in their homes? We don't know that yet. We'll know that data over the next couple months. So I'm going to go on record tonight and say that I don't believe that air travel will never, ever go back to the way it was pre-COVID. That does not mean we're not going to fly, but I think especially business travel, and that is a high revenue source for the airlines because they count on businesses calling meetings at the last minute, booking at a high rate, getting on a plane, going, and then coming back that night and doing the next thing, the next trip the same time next week. I think that Zoom and other teleconferencing has replaced a good deal of that. I may be mistaken, but that's what I'm saying here on the air tonight. I just think it's different. And I think another thing, we used to go into the store and see tons of choices for various kinds of vegetables and fruits and cereals. There's a scene with Robin Williams. You might remember the movie Moscow on the Hudson, where he goes in and he's from Russia and he's never seen all this choice and he just freaks out and has to go cry on the sidewalk because there's just so much opulence there. I'm wondering with not being able to get the food that we order. I don't know about you, but I don't often get the food that I order when we order these delivery services. Maybe these manufacturers are going to change the amount of choices we have. We'll probably get by if they do, but that could be another change in the fabric of America here. And of course, as investors, we've got to know about that. I saw a really interesting article, really an ad in LinkedIn this week, saying we're looking for COVID-19 contact tracers that we can train. So we have a whole new occupation. And if you remember, this is episode 17. I think it was episode 15. It might have been 14, where I walked through the various steps of what it takes to do a contact trace on an individual. Well, now they're training people to be able to interview and chart this out so that medical records can be kept to do this kind of tracing. This is a job that didn't even exist 4 months ago, and yet it's now being advertised on LinkedIn. I mean, that's where we are here in America. It's just crazy. And that's because, again, this is my opinion, sometimes there are months when decades of transformation will happen. Sometimes there are months when decades of transformation will happen, and this is such a time. I really believe it is. Okay, so here's our first question, guys. Is the nationwide canceling of Independence Day celebrations affecting you? Answer A. Well, it'll be a sad day empty of celebration for you. B. I will miss celebrations, but I want to be extra safe, away from crowds. Answer C. We will celebrate with a small group of family members. Or D. My state will be celebrating. And we have callers, viewers of our program from all 4 time zones, I believe, tonight. So give me your answer. We're on about a 30-second delay, so I'm going to keep talking here while you guys are submitting your answers. I'm going to respond to anybody. Hi, Brian. Okay. I have a fantastic guest for us tonight, guys, while you're coming in with your answers here. And I'm just so excited. I really am. Hey, Karen. I want to do a shout out here too. I've never done this before, but I think it's appropriate while you guys are giving me the answers. I have a lifelong friend. Literally, I have known this lady for 50 years. She and her husband are in South Florida, and he had a very serious injury on a roof and was injured this week. And my heart just goes out to them. I think you guys are watching. You said that you'd be watching with him in Traction there from South Florida. And I just want you to know that you both mean a lot to me. And I know our viewers will have a quiet thought or quiet prayer for your quick recovery. I think I can say Steve and Deb. So just know that our audience is thinking about you. What do we got here? We got Kate in Montana. Hey, how are you? There's Deb. And Greg says, hey, it'll be a sad day without celebration. That's absolutely true. Absolutely. We often watch from home too. In fact, we can watch the fireworks from our back porch when they happen, but they've canceled them for Glen Ellen. They've rescheduled them for Labor Day, and I hope that's going to happen. So we've got C's, B's, C's, C, A, D. Yes, my state will be celebrating, right, in Montana. Kate, absolutely. Thanks, guys. So it's not often that a church that starts in 1864 and has Abraham Lincoln at one of its first services is still around in this time. Over the 17 episodes of CB3 Live, we have talked about all kinds of financial matters and hardships that have been caused by this pandemic. In fact, we have 3 daughters. We have a daughter-in-law who lost her job and regained it. We have a daughter who is struggling because she works at one of the airlines, and until very, very recently, it was very touch and go if she was going to even stay on. And then we have another daughter who is having a banner year because her particular business is flourishing, which we've talked about throughout. And I think sometimes my job is one of the hardest is managing portfolios, but I want to tell you this. To be executive pastor of one of the largest churches in Chicago and dealing with the need is a far bigger task and a pay grade way above mine. My guest tonight is Dr. Bill Birchie, the executive pastor of the Moody Church in Chicago. Dr. Birchie joined the staff in 1994. He has a BA from Biola, an MDiv, Master's Seminary, another Master's from Trinity Evangelical, and his doctorate from Trinity in 2012. Pastor Birchie, who I will call Bill in this interview, has the responsibility of overseeing both ministries and ministers at Moody Church Chicago. Churches are often seen as the last line of defense, keeping people from poverty, because that's where folks go but don't have anywhere else to turn. And certainly they have been hit during this pandemic. And I have all ears for you, Bill, as you tell us about what things are like at Moody Church. I'd like to present to you guys, welcome Pastor Bill from Moody Church. Pastor Bill comes to us from his home here in Chicagoland. Welcome.
Thank you, Charles. It's great to be here.
So the financial trajectory of where this pandemic is going has taken a turn from when we first booked this interview, you and I. It's taken a turn for the worse. And I have to think that that's going to put some financial pressure on giving and the members in the church. You're in the 3rd biggest city in America, and you have this awesome responsibility. I can't even fathom what it must be like to do your job. And I have to just ask, in all of your 4 degrees, did you take Pandemic 101 in your training?
I did not. That would have been very helpful, though. But I actually have to say, I mean, it's a blessing to be part of a church that is a larger church with a large staff and a really solid leadership team, so that I never feel like I've got to do anything on my own. I mean, quite the contrary. I feel like we're a team that works very well together, and not only the paid staff, but we have a church family that's just so diverse and so helpful in many ways that, again, I feel like we're kind of pulling together as a team I've often said that most of the good ideas that I've implemented have not been my own. My job is just to make sure they don't get dropped. And I really do mean that. I mean, there's genuinely just great input from people all over the church.
So 17 nations, I understand, are represented at the Moody Church. I mean, that's about as diverse as any church in Chicago could possibly be. I bet that brings a lot of challenge, but a lot of innovative thought into your presence as well.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, we did that survey back for my doctoral work, and we stopped counting at 70. It was a few more than that, I think. And people from all over the world, they do bring a very different perspective. I mean, from a Christian standpoint, on the nature of what the church is supposed to be, what our obligations are to one another, what we do with and for our community and so forth. And so, it's a great blessing.
Financially, what do you see as the biggest trajectory changer today? And then if we go into a round two, and of course there's going to be eventually an aftermath. I mean, the pandemic of 1918, 1919, which Moody Church was there for, not too many churches were. What happens on the other side of this?
Yeah, that is a great question. If we continue doing everything online and go a few more even months, we're probably anticipating at least a couple more months, at least, that we won't be able to gather together. I mean, we have a sanctuary that seats almost 3,700 people, and to have 100 or 200 in there is really not a great worship experience. We have been blessed by faithful giving from people in our congregation. Our giving is actually slightly up over last year.
Wow. Okay.
It's slightly down during the period here from March through June. We were up 3 months, and then June was actually off quite a bit, about 20% off of last year. But again, we're blessed because we have resources that we've set aside, not knowing what they'd be used for, but 10% of our building fund, 10% of our general fund, and that obviously helps us where we are right now. But I think in terms of the trajectory, I don't imagine it's going to get any easier or any better, because more people being out of work, people are obviously afraid. You don't know what's going to happen, so that doesn't lend itself towards greater generosity. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, and people are obviously probably having to make a choice. Do I give to the church this week, or do I either pay my mortgage? I mean, there has been some mortgage deferment. There have been some car payment deferments, and I hope that the government will continue to offer those. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about an expanded tax break for charitable gifts, and I think I sent this to you because that spurred me to think, it is a financial program, but I mean, it's really important that, the backbone of America are our churches. So how you're affected financially, I would argue, affects the whole economy financially and certainly spiritually and emotionally. I'm not downplaying those, but in the context of our program, what were your thoughts if you were able to look at that article at all as far as expanding the tax break for charitable gifts?
Yeah, I did take a look at it. And I think in general, I support anything that increases people's ability and willingness to give charitably, even if they're not legally required to give all that money to the Moody Church. Because there is great blessing in generosity and in making a difference in people's lives. And when we do that on a personal level through a lot of these charities, these smaller charities that are personally and relationally addressing issues that nobody else really can, know. I think so. I'm very much in favor of it. It sounds like they've got some work to do to try to figure out the details of that.
I couldn't tell if there were any loopholes like, we're going to increase this, but the church has to now answer to the House of Representatives or something.
Yeah. I mean, even as you think about the future of the church and religious freedom, or the future of the country, religious freedom, and there's constantly efforts to roll back the tax benefits that churches receive.
Yeah, and property, obviously.
If that happens, hopefully, we don't give, obviously, because of our tax, the implications of that. We give because we believe in the ministries of the church. We give as part of faithfulness to what God has entrusted to us, right? That's the Christian perspective. And Jesus himself said it's more blessed to give than receive. And having been on both ends of that, and I really like the receiving end. I find a lot of blessing in receiving. Sure. But I've also found great blessing in giving, and I think that I'd like to inspire that.
So you've been without a senior pastor for almost 5 years, I think, and the 17th senior pastor since 1864 begins on Sunday preaching to an empty auditorium. And he'll face financial challenges, I'm sure, just like you have. What's that like to begin a new ministry where you certainly want to encourage people to attend and obviously give, and you can't see them or meet them?
Yeah, it is. That is going to be a challenge for me. And Pastor Philip Miller and his wife Krista, they're wonderfully relational people. And one of the things that he wanted to commit to, has committed to, is building relationships in the first several months of his ministry, even setting aside some of the other priorities so that he can develop those. I think now that we've got, we can get 50 or so people, social distancing, masks and so forth, we can have events where he can meet some people. It'll take a little bit longer, but perhaps those might even be opportunities to go a little bit deeper with fewer folks. It is different though. I mean, he's preached, when his first time to preach when he candidated was on camera. I had my first opportunity to preach on camera a couple weeks ago. It is different.
Yeah.
You're used to, a sanctuary full of people and you're really kind of engaging with them. And now you're just sort of, you're working to do that. You're not preaching to a camera, but to people behind the camera.
Exactly. It's framing it. Guys, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to ask Pastor Bill one more question, but so that we can keep moving along, there is about a 30-second delay in our transmission. Go ahead and send questions now. I think we'll have time for 2 or 3 questions. If you have a question for Pastor Bill about the Moody Church, the finances of the church, what it's like to, work in the city of Chicago in ministry, go ahead and send that in now. And I did ask you ahead of time in the green room, Pastor Bill, if you'd be comfortable with this, but you are an investor, I'm sure. And without, talking about specifics, there have been people that have been scared to keep their money in the market, or they've gone to some cash, and there are others like my clients and myself that have been, full bore, fully invested all throughout. And the NASDAQ hit another lifetime high today. The S&P has yet to catch up. I'm curious if you have any words of wisdom on what your mindset has been that's brought you comfort during this time as an investor.
Yeah. Caution is obviously wise, but we can't live in fear. I think one of the things that I understand as a Christian too is that we have far less control over our lives than we think. And we can think, we can control things and play this and that. And ultimately we really can't. So I know that, I speak obviously from a Christian perspective, and I think if without the sovereignty of God, a confidence in his love and sovereignty would be difficult. But I would just say, I've taken advantage of this time as well.
Sure.
I think you do your research and you invest with the appropriate amount of risk for your situation. I take a long approach, although as the older I get, that long approach is getting shorter.
Sure.
As I'm sure you can appreciate. But I think, this is actually it's a good opportunity. Yeah. And that's kind of how I've looked at it. I've got a couple of kids that are in college right now. I've been talking to them along those lines and just say, don't think about making a quick buck over the next few months or a year. This is a good opportunity for you to be thinking long term.
Absolutely.
And, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, though.
And I tell people, there's some good things that have come out of this. My car now gets 3 weeks to the gallon. So, from Karen, and you've talked a little bit about this, but singularly from Karen, what's the church's biggest challenge during COVID, the single biggest challenge since mid-February?
Yeah, I think it's meaningfully connecting with our church family. We've done a lot of things. We're sending packages to kids. We're doing visitation at people's homes. We're making phone calls. We're hoping the goal is 3,000 phone calls over this month period. We contacted 650 of our seniors over the first few weeks, just checking in on them. But it's still difficult. There's a lot of lonely people. A lot of our congregation is single, roughly half, even a little bit more than half.
Wow.
And so some of them have been staying home. They've been working from home, and it's just difficult. And so trying to make sure that we really care for them well, I think, is the number one issue.
Got it. Yeah. Pastor Bill, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening and encouraging. As I said, the churches are the backstop in society, both at a spiritual, emotional level, and financially, we want you to be whole. We do. And we just really appreciate your insights on this and wish you the very, very best of success, obviously at Moody, and now with Pastor Phil starting on Sunday. So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You have a great evening. Take care.
You too.
All right. Okay, guys. All right, here we go. So the U.S. economy. The NASDAQ, 13.8%. Oh my gosh. We're almost at 14% on the year. As I mentioned in my interview with Bill, we're at new lifetime highs. The S&P's still down, so that's a 17% differential roughly. The Dow down 9.5%, the Russell down 14.2%. So that's why our single biggest holding for many of us in our programs is QQQ, the NASDAQ. So, we're just really pleased that U.S. stocks finished their best quarter in 20 years. Record close for the NASDAQ. Look at the light blue line versus the two dark blue lines. You're seeing winners and losers in this, and it's not only individual stocks, it's entire asset classes. And the technology that's represented in the NASDAQ is clearly the winner. Not just technology when you think of chips and software, but medical technology, automotive technology, Tesla, which you're going to see in just a moment. Lifetime high. Non-farm payrolls. Now, normally this comes out on Friday, and I never get to comment on it. But every once in a while, when the 4th of July comes near the first Friday, which it is, tomorrow's the legal holiday for July 4th, then they published the report on Thursday, so I got to see it today. Non-farm payrolls rose by 4.8 million in June. Much better than the expected increase of 2.9 million. Folks, that's a beat of 2 million people taking jobs. The unemployment rate fell to a crisis low of 11.1. Now, I realize you might be saying, Charlie, why are you getting excited about an 11.1 unemployment rate? Because the estimate was 12.4. Think back to 1980 when your mortgage, went from 14 to 15.5, but at least your CD went from 12 to 13.5. Okay? These are different times. But the key takeaway here is that this is following the same trajectory that started in May. All right? And that's a good one. I've shown you this chart many times. I'll give you a break from it next week. This is the 100-year look at the markets, the 100-year look at the markets. The red areas are secular bear markets. The blue lines are secular bull markets. If you can squint, get into your monitor real close, look for that little down line. That's what's happening right now. We are still clearly in a secular bull market, and it's my opinion. This goes on for 8 to 12 more years based on the history going back 100 years, and we are investing for that. May pending home sales. Briefing, my favorite advisory service here, expected a gain of 18%, which would have been terrific. But you guys see that number, right? 44.3 from Briefing and the Labor Department. May pending homes. 44.3 jump. The prior was minus 21. Hope of deliverance. If you look very carefully on the chart, all the squiggling is what the earnings forecast revisions are of the S&P 500. That little green box that you see that is off the chart is the highest expectation, most positive in 20 years. 20 years. You've seen this chart before. Normally, you don't see it with the little dashes on it, and that's because the quarter just began. Every quarter, there's a new earnings cycle, and so far, just a few companies have reported, but 81% of them have beaten earnings estimates. Now, I understand you're saying, Charles, they're aiming low, really, really low, and there's truth to that. But the reality is, there have only been 19% that were surprises to the downside. So this is a positive. U.S. consumer confidence, biggest up move, and yes, I still see it's negative. I see it. But the biggest up move, look at that, all the way back to 2015. And that's because people are seeing progress being made. And this data is current. This is within a few days ago. So yes, this is factoring in wave 2. Pending home sales, look at the jackknife there. And yes, of course it's way down from where it was way back in 2011. But the jackknife is getting almost back to where it was prior to the pandemic. ISM, now I've been showing you housing, I've shown you consumer sentiment. ISM is the Institute of Service Management Manufacturing Index. Went from negative to positive. It's the first reading above 50% in 4 months. The dividing line between an expansion in the economy and contraction is 50%, and we're now above that in 4 months. I need to take just a moment to talk about USMCA. So you guys are, I'm sure, familiar with the acronym NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. Very famously, Ross Perot, who just left this planet very recently, would say, well, let me tell you about NAFTA. You hear that huge sucking sound? That's the sound of all these jobs being taken out of America down to Mexico and to Canada, but mostly to Mexico. Well, as of midnight on July 1st, the new agreement is now in place, and I, for one, am really glad. Why? The International Trade Commission is predicting that the USMCA, that's United States, Mexico, Canada, will create up to 589,000 new American jobs. Now, if that's a man or a woman working, they probably have a spouse, they might have 2 kids. That's affecting millions of Americans just putting this in place, and that's just off the bat. This is a huge bonus for America right now, a huge bonus in a time when we are suffering with social tension, a pandemic that's now raging into a possible stage 2. I am excited to see what USMCA will do, and we'll keep you up to date on that. I mentioned earlier, Tesla became the world's most valuable car maker. For 50 years, that has been Toyota, no more. It is now Tesla. Look at that rise on the black line. To give you a perspective, I put Volkswagen in here, which has just been sort of puttering around, no pun intended, for the last many months. But now Tesla has crossed the line and is the biggest, most valuable car company in the world. They're not shipping the most cars, but the value of their stock makes them the largest car company in America. So let's take a question. Okay, what is the significance to you of all these endless economic reports? Now, I've been doing this. This is 17 episodes. I am bringing you honest, factual, good data. It just so happens to be encouraging data because you're not seeing it in the mass media outlets. So tell me, is this data not trustworthy to you? Do you think letter B, this is the calm before the storm of the second wave? Human nature is to be negative, and I believe the best is yet to come for our country. That would be the optimistic point of view. Or D, not sure what to think about it. So I'm going to give you guys a few moments here. I'm going to take a sip of water and... Okay. While you guys are thinking about that, I'm going to jump to the next slide. Someone sent me this week, and I like it a lot. Real eyes realize real lies. Real eyes realize real lies. This could be, I suppose, controversial, but I don't think so. I'm telling you the truth. I'm supporting it. Every single slide I put on this screen that's not my opinion is attributed to a data source. Every week that I'm doing this, I'm grabbing the closest to the current day data that I can find and bringing it to you. And I think that our audience is realizing that there are some real lies going on out there in the media, and they're trying to get you depressed about the future of this country. I'm watching just today on Bloomberg, people trying to make this unemployment report look bad. Well, yeah, there were 4.8 million jobs that were still down from February. Well, everybody knows that. What good does it do to tell someone that? Advance the story. I'm trying to advance the story by bringing you this good news so that you become confident that we're going to pull out of this. So that you become confident we're going to pull out of this, all right? Let's go back, see what we've got here. I have a C from Alice. I got a C from Nell. I got a C from Deb Demogowski. Hey, Deb, how are you? C from Deb Billis. B regarding the pandemic. Okay, Karen, thank you. Debbie, I think it's your first time on here. Deb Demogowski. I got 2 Debbies back to back there in the comments. Glad to have you both on here, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. I think that's it on the answers. So let's move on to bull case, bear case. And as I mentioned, we're going to get into some biotechs. It's a little bit shorter segment because I've got some special stuff for you in. Don't hang up. Don't hang up. I've got 2 great slides to finish the program, okay? But let's look at some biotech. So we're looking at Amgen. The bull case for Amgen, and for those of you that haven't been on and don't know how this works, you read the bull case, you read the bear case, and then you decide whether we buy it or sell it. So bull is buy, sell is bear, okay? So for Amgen, over the last year, several of the company's top-selling drugs suffered a double-digit loss, yet the stock's price has held. They purchased Adzela and increased sales in other drugs, pushing quarter one results higher. These are bullish case. And the company has a strong dividend pattern and a robust share buyback. When a company is buying their own shares, that means that the people that are inside, usually the highest paid officers, believe in the company and they want to own the shares and think that they're fairly priced or they wouldn't buy them. So what's the bear case? Okay, healthcare stocks are among the top performers this year with revenue expectations stemming from COVID-19. Well, the problem with that is the next point. Despite strong performance, the virus is likely to have negative long-term impacts due to a decrease in employer-sponsored healthcare costs and an increase in operating costs. And few companies with potential vaccines treatments are likely to profit from their research. It's possible that they may literally be expected to give it away in promise for some benefits from government. I don't know if that's true or not, and we won't know until there is a de facto vaccine found. So again, I know there's a delay here, so I'm going to give you guys a few moments. Is this a B for buy or an S for sell? Please do not type BS in the text box because they'll screen me on YouTube. Okay? Again, I know you guys are about 25 seconds behind. So, do we have a bull case for Amgen? Do we have a bear case? Or is anybody voting? Okay. I don't see anybody yet. Karen Yates is a B for buy. Okay. Anybody else? As I say, if you're one of our clients, all you have to do is look in your portfolio. Oh, Nellie's a sell. Okay, so if you look in your accounts with us, you'll see if these stocks are in there. I'm not going to buy anything that's not in our accounts, and I'm not going to sell anything that is in our accounts. Okay? Hossein, hey, Hossein, how are you? It's a sell. Okay. Good to see you, Hossein. I haven't seen you in a while. Well, guys, I'm going to go forward, and the answer is it's a buy. Amgen just won 2 major court rulings yesterday. Just won 2 major court rulings yesterday. They're up 10%. In just 2 days, we remain a buyer. If you are in our GI program, you are a participant in that big move in Amgen, okay? Hey, Chris, how are you? I guess I need to wait longer because now I'm seeing a bunch of sells. Well, guys, it's not a sell when Amgen moves 10%. It's the biggest 2-day move in 40 years for Amgen, guys. So that's my take. Moderna, I've talked about this stock many times. They already have a solid pipeline of therapies before the start of COVID-19. So they didn't just start with COVID-19. Now the company's market value has roughly doubled with the initiation of their vaccine. Okay? Despite that, Moderna looks somewhat undervalued if it still can successfully start bringing products to market. That's the bull case. What's the bear case? Well, there could be 6 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine searching for patients. So the doses are looking for the patients in 2021. Companies responsible for 4 billion doses have stated that this is a not-for-profit exercise. That seems kind of crazy to me, but that's what I'm seeing. It's unclear if Moderna can even supply the markets and consensus by 2021-2022. And the CEO has avoided answering questions specifically about this. Yet, the $17 billion increase in market capitalization, there are people out there that see a 70% downside from that, and that these near-term news flows represent, about 100 plus companies competing will likely pop the bubble. But there was a whole lot going for Moderna. So I'm going to give you guys a moment here. I'm checking over at my monitor to see if I can figure out where you are and when you're going to be able to make a vote on this. All right. Anybody? I think we got a sell from Chris. Chris gave me a sell on Amgen, And now he's giving me a sell on Moderna. Anybody else on Moderna? Anybody else on Moderna? All right, I'm going to move on, guys. And it is a sell. And here's why. Volatility and massive uncertainty make this stock a trader's stock and not an investor's stock. So if you want to trade, Deb, we got a buy from Deb. Well, maybe it will be a buy. Maybe it will be a buy. But for right now, it is too risky for our portfolios. I am not saying I'm never going to buy Moderna. I'm saying right now it's a trader's stock. People argued that Tesla was a trader's stock when it reached 900 and traded back to 6. Well, we bought it at 670 and now it's working on 1300, which will be almost a double for us, okay? All right, so that's where that is. I want to remind you that if you have not subscribed, please do that, and it's because we have new shows coming for you. We're going to do a Monday show. It's probably 4 to 5 minutes long. I'm not sure when it's going to start. And then we have another, what we call Evergreen series, which is just going to talk about investing tips and other things that will be useful to you guys, those of you that are watching the channel. So do subscribe and hit the little bell so that you can be alerted. And again, I tweet every single day. I've done it for 8 years, but my old feed just has tons of junk on it. So I'm shutting that down. I have a brand new feed called CB3 Live. And if you want to know every day what's going on, and sometimes I tweet intraday, please follow me. Just see that button right there. Just click it and go from there. Here's how you can find us. Okay, CB3, CB3.com, Office, Web, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Now, I told you if you stuck around, I had 2 very special things for you. Now, I got to be careful on this one. There's no script. But what I've got for you is a protest scene. Now, I realize that could be controversial. Those of you that have known me a long time know that I try to bring things to you that you wouldn't see in other news outlets. And this was a very unusual protest scene that candidly didn't make me angry. It made me sad. And I wanted to share it with you. I've never seen anything like this before. Right here in Chicago, right by the lakefront, this is the protest scene that I saw. And it wasn't just these 2. There were hundreds of them. And I wondered what took so long for these birds to do their protest. And I realized that they knew that if they didn't do it fairly soon, they would run into the statute of limitations. Now, I don't know if these 200 birds that I saw, and I only got 2 on camera here, if this was a super organized protest or if they were just winging it. I don't know. But I do know that this is one unusual protest, and you got to feel for the little guys who are losing their places to perch. Last week I promised you fireworks, and now, since many of us will have no fireworks on July 4th this year, courtesy of my producer, Tom Brown, and Peter Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, I bring you fireworks for 2020. Well, there you have it, folks. As I always end every program, for we have not been given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. We have not been given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. That's 1 Timothy 7. 2 Timothy, 1:7. And I always end with, it is just my deeply held belief, folks, that we will not only survive this pandemic, but we will thrive. Keep thinking positively. All right? Keep thinking positively. That's what we're going to do on this program. I hope you guys have a wonderful July 4th as much as you can, given the situation in this country. But I hope to see you back next Thursday night as we continue. That's our program for tonight, Thursday, July 2nd. I'm your host, Charles Brown. From COVID to clarity, this is CB3 Live.